What would happen if we didn't have public funding for the Catholic school system? How would this impact the Catholic Church? I mean, that's a big question, but essentially, if someone is standing in the position where they'd say, maybe we don't want publicly funded Catholic schools, and they're a Catholic, they're a practicing Catholic saying that, what bad thing are they not aware of?
Sure. Okay. What you then have is that the only publicly funded school system is the secular one. That is our de facto state religion now, is secularism. Right now, there's a genuine neutrality that you don't have in many places, where there are multiple publicly funded school options, where you can't just say, well, we're secular by default. I know there was a recent podcast episode about the United States, and that is their state religion, effectively, is secular neutrality. That would be the case with us. Now, some people have this idea that
which isn't actually neutral.
It's absolutely not neutral. It never has been. It's essentially secular humanism, right? Now, would this lead to a level of purity among our schools where now they don't take government money so they could be authentically Catholic? Well, you talk about serving two masters, the government and the church. Well, you have to serve two masters if you're a for-profit business too, right? And I've talked to people in the United States, and they don't necessarily have much better things to say about some of their parochial schools or diocesan schools, right? They have the challenge of they've got to, they have to make ends meet. They got to balance their budget. So and they need enough teachers in order to make the school operate. So they don't necessarily always hire super devout Catholics or only take in students from families that are extremely devoted to the faith, right? All you'd have, I think, now you might have some...
Couldn't you have private and charter Catholic schools?
Well, first of all, charter schools aren't allowed to be religious in Alberta. For whether that's just or not, that's the case. Could we remove that? Well, again, that's hanging by a legislative thread, right? That could be changed if we had a government in place that didn't like charter schools.
So you're saying if you didn't have publicly funded Catholic schools, but you did have Catholic charter schools, for instance, you're saying that would be up to the whim of the government to change.
Absolutely.
So it wouldn't be guaranteed on a constitutional level.
Charter schools are reviewed every 5 years, right? So if the Ministry of Education deemed that this school wasn't up to snuff, they could just remove it like that, in a way that is not the case with separate schools now. Could you
separate schools?
So legally speaking, Catholic schools are called dissentient schools or separate schools to distinguish them
publicly funded?
The Catholic publicly funded school system.
Dissentient.
Dissentient, yeah. How's that for a tricky word for a grade 4 student to say, right? Or it's dissentient schools, right? So
I still think I would have had better luck with transubstantiation.
Yeah, that's a tricky.
I thought you were going to say, I think I would have been able to handle it.
I'll run it past the next grade 4 student I teach. But now you might have independent schools that would be, very devoted. But then there's a question of, well, is that accessible to everybody? Can everyone afford to send their child to an independent Catholic school? I'm sure the ones that exist do everything they can to accommodate people who can't afford it. But they've got a budget, right? I mean, there's only so much that they're free to do there, right? And if both according to our church and according to our country, the right to bring your child up in your faith is a right, it's not a right that means anything if you can't afford it, right? And that would probably be the case. I also, and again, even the private independent schools, I'm aware of some in the United States that because they need a teacher, they'll hire Unitarians to teach there, right? So I don't think there's any, if what you want is a kind of Catholic purity in the school, I don't think there's a legislative way into that, right? That's got to be something that happens in a
culture.
In a culture, a lot of it's got to be downstream from leadership, that's something that they're enforcing in their hiring practices and their professional development.
So basically, don't blame the government for something that culture and individuals could solve.
If we had solid Catholic educators and leaders, there's nothing they'll throw at us in the curriculum that we can't work around, right, or respond to. But we just wouldn't have that guarantee. It would be a situation that is the case in Nova Scotia, it's the case in the Maritimes, it's the case now with Newfoundland, which used to have separate schools but got rid of them, Quebec as well, where either they just don't exist anymore because the economy of that province is not in a situation where anyone has enough money to afford to send their kids to a Catholic school. Right, that's what happened in Newfoundland. As soon as they got rid of the separate schools, they just dwindled down to a very small number. Or only the very wealthy can send their children to Catholic schools, which is problematic from a Catholic social teaching perspective, to say the least.
You don't want Catholic education to become elitist.
That's exactly it, which will definitely mitigate its evangelistic witness. And again, it's not just that only rich Catholics can afford it. Like, a lot of people won't want to spend on it, and then that evangelistic opportunity is lost. And I think the Catholic schools are the best engine of evangelization that we have right now, right? Because where else are you getting told every day, every weekday from 8 to 3, how everything in your life points to Jesus Christ. Like podcasts are great, right? Right? Catholic YouTubers are great. They absolutely are. Homilies are wonderful. Those are snapshots out of really busy lives where we're bombarded with things, right? The Catholic schools of God, I can't think of a better opportunity than our Catholic schools for evangelization. And why would we gut that on the dice roll that might lead to a few that are real pure? I think that's a very risky gamble to take, right? And it wouldn't get rid of public schooling, right? Public schooling would be the default. So there would be a bunch more students who, instead of getting evangelization, even if it's imperfect evangelization or whatever, who are now just getting the full-fledged secular, they're already getting it from the media and maybe from their families, and now they're getting it from their schools too. And I struggle to see how that helps us.
So thanks everybody for watching. Hope you found it helpful along your journey of faith. Please know that I'm praying for you. And if you would, be so kind as to pray for us also. Every blessing to you. God bless.